Today we're doing a quick sound design breakdown for Yakuza 0. So my brother told me about this game and gifted it to me, and I've been playing it a lot lately, and I really like the sound design. It's super punchy and impactful. It's not quite Japanese. It's not quite Western. It's like kind of somewhere in the middle. And so I thought it would be fun to try my hand at it. It's impossible to top the original, but I'm reasonably happy with how it turned out. Here we go. Let's start with the punches. Those sound like this. All right, so the first layer is just these whooshes, and there is zero processing on here. It's just whooshes. And then next, the actual punches. Okay, so let's see what we have on here. All right, so first we have TransX, which is a transient shaper. And so that is just boosting all of the transients, making them feel a little bit more punchy. Then we have Disperser. So just a little tiny bit, because any more than this, and I think it really starts to veer into sci-fi. I don't know if I need to explain what Disperser does, or if I know what Disperser does. There's a reason that everybody loves this thing, because it's an all-pass filter. It smears out your transients and kind of like elongates them and adds like a tonality to them, like that kind of thing. People love this thing for a reason. Like, you can compress things really, really hard and put disperser on it, and it will still sound punchy. Yeah, so just a teeny bit. And then we're using the Bertom denoiser. Right? Like, it's kind of an effect unto itself. It's not just for the denoising. It's almost like a gating sort of effect where you're tightening up the tails a little bit. And that is the effect I wanted to go for, besides just the actual denoising of it. Then you have our bass. That is just adding some harmonics to the low end so that it really comes through a lot more on small speakers. We have this Waves Factory equalizer. So what this is doing is spectral balancing. So I'm kind of on a spectral balancing kick right now, for better or for worse. I'm just mixing into these things. So I'll add like the Waves Factory equalizer, Gullfoss, some of the ozone stabilizer stuff, and I'll usually mix and design into that. They're already on the chain at the beginning, and I'm kind of making choices based on how this thing responds. It just kind of gives you a little bit more confidence in making like crazy choices, because you know that it's not going to get wildly out of control. Then we have Knock doing some transient shaping into a clipper, classic. And then Ozone, we're doing the spectral shaper, so that's kind of doing like taking away the like really harsh 6K ear piercing kind of stuff. Then the stabilizer decided to do the opposite of Gullfoss. It's decided that there's too much high end and it's trying to remove it, and I'm fine with that. But it's just little bits of that, quite a bit of limiting, and that's that. Next is like a bone breaking sweetener, so that kind of comes on the tail end of the punch. And it looks like it's a lot of just exactly the same processing as before, but this is what it sounds like without anything. And then with everything, very crusty. And then all together. So the whoosh, the punch, and the bone break. Let's do this title card for when the enemy's names pop up on the screen. First layer, I believe, was Tonsturm Spin Tracer. I think it was just fire, and I played it through there. But it looks like I grabbed it from Global Sampler and then just got rid of the original. That sounds like this. The only thing that has on it is track spacer. So that is receiving from these other layers and is pushing frequencies out of the way to make space for those other layers, which sound like this. Let's see. With no effects, it sounds like this. Like a metal impact sound. Then you have TransX boosting the transients. Then you got Enforcer. That is doing a lot of work here. So it's basically just adding in a synthesized sine transient. Then we got our bass, thumpy thumpy. Then we have this frequency shifter. So that's subtle, but it's adding like a which will make more sense as we add reverb in there, because it'll kind of elongate that whole thing. Teeny tiny amount of disperser, Valhalla Vintage, pretty long decay, and then just cleaning up a lot of low and high end. So just kind of a mid-rangey reverb. And we got Knock, doing transient shaper and clipper, and then that same cleanup spectral balancing thing that sounds like this. Right, so you can hear Ozone is also doing like a lot of work there. And then the next layer without any effects sounds a little bit like this. Slappy slap. So first we have Smack Attack. I'm on a Waves kick. I'm on a classic Waves transient shaper kick. So I went on a journey earlier this month where I tried every single transient shaper ever created. And I'm not kidding. All of them. Like the most obscure fucking transient shaper that you've ever heard. I tried it. I'm a broken shell of my former self because I was looking for something really, really specific. In this case, I wanted something super fast that could like latch on to every little fluctuation, just like pull the texture out of like any sound. Because I know of a lot of really good transient shapers that are great for like a one-off punch here or there, but they aren't really fast enough to pick up all of these little fluctuations. And so I tried everything and it was Trans-X. It was Trans-X of all things and Smack Attack. If you set them right, they're able to pick up like every little kind of bump in the sound, which can be detrimental sometimes, but really often that is what I'm looking for. Anyway, I just wanted to share my pain with you. Then we're going into Knock. We got Transient Shaper and Clipper, Valhalla Vintage, pretty long tail. And then we have that same kind of balancing cleanup chain, and then Track Spacer is receiving from the main transient, then it's just ducking around. Altogether, they sound like this. Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the money. I want to preface this before I play this sound, that this sounds like shit by itself. I think it sounds really cool in the mix, but when you hear it peeled back, it's like, oh, that's what that sounds like? I recorded a book and just flipped through the pages because I wanted that like shuffling cards kind of thing, super over the top. Right, it's kind of like, I mean, it sounds like paper, which it's supposed to. When you really hear it isolated like that, it's like, oh, that's actually like really artifacty and kind of weird sounding. And then the other sound, just an old school cash register. I thought that that would be, I can't remember what the original sounds like, but I thought that that would be like kind of a, you know, you're punching these guys and money's like flying out of their bodies and it's kind of comical. So cash register, why not? And then there is coins. Okay, if you've ever tried to record coins before, you know the struggle. It is so hard to get a coin or some coins to sound like coins. It always is fucked up. So I went on to SoundQ and I found this little sample and just like kind of zhuzhed it up. Very similar processing to what you've seen a million times already. Altogether, those layers sound like this. So it's like, that's an okay sound. It's fine. But I think in the context of the mix, like with the punch sound on top of that, it's very satisfying. If you don't have that punch, it's kind of anemic and weird, but just in the mix, I think it works. And then that wasn't enough, so I added this like paper fluttering sound over top because I wanted to accentuate the cash flying out. Okay, next is the taser. This was kind of tricky because like this is a really big sound for being tased. I don't know. I have thankfully never been tased before, so I don't think that it sounds like this. If you look at the animation and if you played the game before, like the taser stops you in your tracks. It's powerful. There's electricity shooting all up through Kiryu's body. You know, it stops you in your tracks. Like I first did like just a pass with like just crackles that sounded more like what a real taser would probably sound like, just like a, but then I wanted to just make it really big. So that's what I did. And then the other thing is it still didn't sound quite right. So I put a punch in there too, which sounds like this. And like if you watch the enemy, like he's swinging that thing pretty hard. He's punching at you. Because my first impression was like, well, it's a taser. It's not going to sound like a punch. But what is real and what feels right are two very different things. And I'm not even going to open this up because it's just the same kind of processing you've seen, sensing a theme here, where we're just like accentuating the texture, boosting the transients, beefing it up with our bass, and then limiting the shit out of it. And that's pretty much it. I kind of like this moment where Kiryu grabs the enemy that like leather gripping sound. It's so stupid and over the top, and it sets my heart aflutter. Like if you take a belt and just like twist it around, and then all of these, I can't show the processing anymore because again, I pulled them out of Global Sampler and just got rid of the original to save some resources. But all of these like cinematic whooshes are done with Tonsturm Spin Tracer. So I just put fire and cloth and all of these things through it and just played with it. Yeah, and then the last thing, there's not really that much else to talk about, but the last... That one's really fun. You got like water splashing from a rag and fruit destruction. It's like very gory, very over the top, and I love it. So that's all that is. It's the same punch from before. So you're like doing the punch, but then you're adding all of these other layers to like really elongate it and highlight. Because that's a big like cinematic moment. So I wanted that to be very big. The whooshes leading into it, that's all Tonsturm Spin Tracer. This video is brought to you by Tonsturm Spin Tracer. Anyway, and then I reused the same money asset from before. Don't do that. I could not for the life of me get another really usable thing out of the material that I recorded, and so I just reused it. It's exactly the same. I'm going to hell. That's all there is to it. But I also kind of figured there's so much else going on in this scene that nobody is going to be like, hey, that's exactly the same non-diegetic money sound that I heard before, isn't it? You got me. Anyway, that is pretty much it. I hope that this is helpful or entertaining or whatever to somebody, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!